Which brings us to Joshua Dienstag, who's agreed to give the keynote lecture for this event. Joshua, as many of you know, is a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the Department of Political Science, and also serves there now as the university's first husband. As some of you know, as his wife, Jennifer Mnookin, was recruited to serve as the university's chancellor recently, which meant that, of course, UCLA lost two beloved faculty when Joshua and Jennifer left for Madison. For almost 20 years before that, he served in UCLA's political science department and in the law school here. And before that was a professor at the University of Virginia for many years.
Of the many capacities that have been traditionally cited as distinctively human, none is more important or more heavily relied upon in the Western philosophical tradition than the use of language. From Plato and Aristotle to Wittgenstein and Gadamer, the human use of language has routinely been used not only to distinguish humans from non-humans, but also to describe what these philosophers took to be distinctive and precious about humans. Speech and language have been repeatedly invoked to characterize humans as particular beings with logos, as the Greeks would have said. Just for this reason, the challenge that talking machines pose to traditional conceptions of the human is profound. Once the stuff of stories and movies, talking machines now exist in millions of households and probably in the pockets of everyone in this room. Of all the generations of humans, we're the one for which the experience of talking to a machine first became a universal experience, and will be the last to directly remember a time before such machines existed. But my core argument is that Turing's imitation game, however ingenious, is in the end a poor way to assess or measure the humanity or personhood of the speaking entity. The imitation game, which is essentially a competition of illusions, encourages programs and programmers to try to fool us, rather than to try to connect with us, as humans routinely do. Still, it's not easy to say exactly what the problem is. Both deception and connection are, of course, an ordinary part of human experience. So we'll take some time to sort through all the issues here and arrive at some tentative judgments. But the import of the question is not just about whether Turing was right or wrong. The import lies in how we are to deal with new quasi-beings which are poised to enter our lives whether we want them to or not. It may be my choice whether to speak to the Alexa on my phone or build an AI companion, but unless you withdraw from modern life entirely, we will all be increasingly faced with daily choices about how to interact with a set of speaking entities that may do things like serve us food, clean our houses, manage our money, or care for our aging relatives. And at the outer edge of possibility, there lurks the idea that citizens might be manufactured, an idea so transformative and frightening that it's hard to think clearly about. Yes. While the possibility of talking machines obviously never occurred to Rousseau, his discussion of sincerity and illusion is helpful in unraveling what is troubling about talking machines and why we should not treat them as human, even when they engage us and pass the Turing test. Rousseau's letter, published in 1758, is focused on the possibility of a theater being opened in his hometown of Geneva, whose sumptuary laws had always prohibited such activity. Geneva at the time was a part of the Swiss Confederacy, but essentially a free city operating under a more or less Republican constitution. Unlike many others who condemned the theater, Rousseau did not advance the traditional argument that actors were people of low moral character. His argument always assumed that they're no less moral than other citizens. He does, however, believe that there is a corrupting effect to be found in the theater that is distinct from the nature of the people who act within it, and is more directly linked to the structure of theatrical experience itself, and that is its obvious insincerity. What Rousseau means is that it's in the nature of theater for actors to say things that they do not believe and to display emotions that they do not feel. Although the actor is not a liar or a fraud in the ordinary sense, the theater is, of course, a space of illusion where, with the consent of the audience, the real is replaced with the unreal. While this pretense is, so to speak, out in the open, Rousseau emphasizes how, honest though the actor may be as a person, his or her profession is one of never-ending deception. Now, this Quotation, what is the talent of the actor? It's the art of counterfeiting himself, of putting on another character than his own, of appearing different than he is, of becoming passionate in cold blood, and of saying what he does not think as if he really did think it. But saying what he does not think as naturally as if he really did think it. I do not precisely accuse him of being a deceiver, but of cultivating by profession the talent of deceiving men and of becoming adept in habits, which can be innocent only in the theater and can serve everywhere else only for doing harm. I want to be clear about something here. Obviously, we don't take every human at their word. We want evidence of their sincerity, and that means we want evidence of the alignment of words and persons, and yet rarely are we ever perfectly satisfied. Rarely are we perfectly and completely sure that our conversation partners are perfectly and completely sincere. And that's both because humans really are often partly sincere and partly insincere in the same breath. And also because there is no single bit of evidence that would perfectly secure a judgment of sincerity. We might be shocked or amazed to find that someone we have long trusted has lied to us, but it always lurks as a possibility. But even when we discover such shocking information, it doesn't take away our sense that a person has spoken to us. The possibility of sincerity entails the possibility of insincerity. In lacking one, the machine also lacks the other. Since its reaction could not be otherwise, it lacks either possibility. So in the final analysis, it's not quite correct to say, as I did earlier, that the speech of talking machines is insincere, but only that it lacks sincerity. I'll end here with the thought that the Turing test was very well intentioned. It arose, at least in part, from Turing's desire not to discriminate against forms of intelligence that might at first seem strange and inhuman. And in that respect, it was profoundly open and egalitarian. But it was also naive, in the sense that by taking every utterance as potentially sincere, it failed to distinguish between truth and lies, between reality and illusion, and ultimately between real persons and their simulations. If we're to find our way through the forest of voices that will surround us in the 21st century, we will have to engage in this kind of discrimination. We certainly cannot leave it to programmers and AI companies to determine who and what counts as a person. There is a potential crisis of democracy in the idea that new persons can be manufactured and multiplied at will. Democracy needs new persons, as Arendt insisted, in order to live and thrive, but new persons have interests, histories, and real presence, not dates of manufacture. Our democracy has enough threats to its existence already without needing to add another one. Thank you very much.